Session kan nu vända.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On Monday, the Prime Minister's safeguarding minister admitted on the floor of the House that there was a cover-up of the child rape gang scandal. Does the Prime Minister think we should expose this cover-up?
Nigel Farage didn't hold back as he sharply criticized Labour's failures on grooming scandals, immigration issues, and what he called a deep lack of moral courage. He laid out what many people already feel but rarely hear out loud. The system isn't working, and Keir Starmer, despite his polished image, is just another face of that problem. Starmer, who once took pride in his record as a prosecutor, found himself under pressure, hit by criticism, facts, and his own silence. But this wasn't just about Farage versus Starmer. It felt bigger, like a clash between ordinary Britons and a political class that avoids difficult conversations by pretending they don't exist. When the spotlight turned to Starmer, he struggled. The question now is, did speaking up help him, or just make things worse?
Mr. Speaker, this is obviously a serious issue. I oversaw the first grooming gang prosecution, which was in Rochdale more than a decade ago. There is a contrast here because the Leader of the Opposition, when she was Minister for Children, Women and Equalities, never raised this issue in the House in 3 years. Mr. Speaker, the Shadow Home Secretary held 352 external meetings during 20 months. How many were on this issue? Not one. And they failed, of course, to implement a single recommendation for the independent inquiry.
When Keir Starmer stepped up to respond, it quickly became clear why critics call him inauthentic. He opened with the familiar political line, "This is a serious issue," which usually signals the opposite is about to happen. Rather than addressing the real concern, the accusations of cover-ups, Starmer shifted focus, as he often does, back to himself. Suddenly, we were taken back to 2012, hearing again about how he led the first grooming gang prosecution. But this isn't about what he did a decade ago. It's 2025, and the system is still letting victims down. People aren't looking for a history lesson. They want to know what he's doing now. And dragging up an old case isn't leadership. It's deflection. Even worse, instead of dealing with claims that local councils, many run by Labour, may have helped hide abuse, Starmer went on the attack. He criticized the opposition, blaming them for not raising the issue sooner or skipping meetings. But that misses the point entirely. This isn't about what others didn't do. The real question is, did Labour-led institutions fail these victims? Were cover-ups allowed on their watch? And why won't he commit to a full national inquiry? He avoided all of it, because facing it head-on would mean confronting failures within his own party. So instead, he offered statistics, gave speeches, and danced around the issue. And in doing so, he revealed something deeper, not just about Labour, but about himself. Starmer wasn't there to bring justice. He was there to protect his image. This wasn't leadership. It was damage control. And if the only thing he can offer to those still suffering today is a reminder of something he did 13 years ago, then he's already let them down.
My position is absolutely clear. Where there's evidence, the police should investigate and there should be appropriate prosecutions. That's route number one. Route number two, we should implement existing recommendations, which did expose what went wrong. They weren't, those recommendations were not implemented by the last government. They're being implemented by this government. We are providing for local inquiries. We're investing more on delivering truth and justice for victims than the party opposite did in 14 long years.
Starmer claims he's offering clarity. But really, it's a classic political move. Oversimplify a deep problem, give two generic options, and hope people don't notice he's avoiding the real issue. First, he suggests standard police investigations. But that's not leadership. It's the absolute minimum. Of course, police should act when there's evidence. That's not a new idea. It's like saying we should call 999 during a robbery. Common sense, not a LAN. Second, he promises to carry out past recommendations. But those have been ignored for years, not because of confusion, but because politicians didn't want to deal with the fallout. Now he's recycling old proposals instead of launching a proper national inquiry. Why? Because a real inquiry would expose where Labour-led councils failed and forced testimony under oath. Instead, we get limited local reviews, run by the very bodies that may have covered up abuse in the first place. No national spotlight, no real accountability. He says Labour is spending more on justice than the previous government, but that's just political point scoring on an issue that deserves far more than a spreadsheet comparison. Justice isn't about safer options, it's about hard truth. And Starmer keeps choosing the politically safe route over real answers. If you're finding this coverage useful, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more honest takes on what's happening in UK politics.
In the last year, Conservative government, we had a gangs task force that found 500 perpetrators, protecting thousands of victims. We launched that inquiry that he's talking about, but more still needs to be done. It's now 4 months since I asked him for a full national inquiry. Instead, he promised 5 local inquiries. There will be one in Oldham. Will he...
This is the breaking point, the moment all the pressure and criticism that's been quietly building finally explodes. And it hits Keir Starmer right where it hurts: his credibility. His opponent doesn't rely on emotion or vague accusations. She brings facts, specific actions, and real results, clearly laid out to show how Starmer's delays weren't just slow, but possibly intentional. What we're watching is a stark comparison. On one side, a leader who moved quickly and got results. On the other, Starmer, still buried in reviews and vague plans. And this isn't some minor policy debate, it's about a national scandal involving serious failures to protect vulnerable children. At this point, it's no longer a political debate, it's about priorities. Starmer comes off as someone more focused on process than on protecting victims. While others stepped up to take action, he continued talking. Now, with the spotlight fully on him, he's left to face one unavoidable question. With all this time and power, what has he actually...
Mr. Speaker, we are providing for local inquiries. This is a serious... Well, they've got so much to say now. Why did they not... Mr. Speaker, why did they not implement a single recommendation in the 14 years they had in office? We're taking forward those. There are recommendations already in place about the change that needs to be taken. They sat on a shelf under the last government. We are acting on them. We are providing for local inquiries, and we're investing...
Name a single place, because nothing is happening. He stood there at the dispatch box, promised 5 local inquiries. Nothing is happening. On the last day of term, he had his minister come out to water down the promise to say they would provide funding. That is not good enough. At least 50 towns are affected by rape gangs. Places like Peterborough, Derby, Birmingham, Nottingham, Leicester, Rotherham, Rochdale and Preston. Is he dragging his heels on this because he doesn't want Labour cover-ups exposed?
The moment of truth finally arrives, and Starmer can't hide behind vague answers anymore. His critic doesn't just question his inaction, she exposes it outright. He had promised 5 separate inquiries, yet only one has been named. Not because the others are complex or still in progress, but because they simply don't exist. There's been no follow-through, no framework, and clearly no urgency. Why? Because it was never about getting answers. It was about optics. It was about appearing concerned without actually taking risks that might affect Labour's reputation. She doesn't soften the blow. She puts it plainly. This isn't some isolated issue. It's national. 50 towns. That number lands hard. It makes it impossible to treat this as a local problem or blame it on a few bad actors. The scale demands national leadership, but instead the public sees Starmer dragging his feet, offering the same tired excuse: local inquiries. And then comes the question that cuts through everything. Is Starmer avoiding a full inquiry because he fears what it might reveal about Labour-run areas? That's the turning point. It's not just a charge, it's an idea planted in the public's mind, one that suggests he's not protecting justice, he's protecting his party. And once that thought sticks, it's hard to unsee.
Mr. Speaker, I spent 5 years prosecuting this case. Mr. Speaker, I was the prosecutor that brought the first case. And when that file was brought to my attention, Mr. Speaker, I noticed that one of the defendants had not been prosecuted previously. Far from covering up, I asked for that file so that I could have a look at it. On the back of that, I then changed the entire approach to prosecutions, which was then lauded by the government. We were doing the right thing and brought those prosecutions. So my record was going after where I thought something had gone wrong and putting it right. She stayed silent throughout their years in government, and so.
Once again, Starmer faces the serious accusation that he's stalling grooming gang investigations to protect Labour-run councils. And once again, he dodges the real issue. Instead of addressing the actual concern, he leans into the same old story. His time as a prosecutor, his work in Rodale, and how he once reopened a case. But this isn't about what he did more than a decade ago. The crisis is unfolding now, and that's what makes his response feel disconnected, even desperate. Rather than show leadership or deliver action, he stands in Parliament reliving the past like a politician trying to ride one achievement through a very different era. It comes off like someone looking for applause for solving one case, while ignoring the bigger failure that followed. And that failure is national. The abuse didn't stop in Rodale. It got worse. The public isn't comforted by one past success. They want answers for what's happening today. Even worse is the tone. He talks like he's still owed credit, as if past action excuses present inaction. Then, as if on cue, he shifts the blame to the opposition, accusing them of staying silent. But that's not what people are asking. They're not comparing who failed more. They're asking why nothing is being done now, why broken systems remain untouched, and why victims are still waiting for real justice. And on those questions, Starmer offers no answers.
Mr. Speaker, he's not the Director of Public Prosecutions anymore. He is the Prime Minister. People want to know what he is going to do now, not talk about what he did years ago. We are asking for a full national inquiry. Andy Burnham wants a national inquiry. He's not Conservative, he's Labour. Harriet Harman wants one. The member for Rotherham wants one. All of the victims I have met want a full national inquiry. He keeps talking about local inquiries, yet they have not got going. And they haven't got going because local authorities don't want to investigate themselves. Local inquiries cannot force witnesses to appear. Local inquiries can't force people to give evidence under oath. So why won't he have?
Mr. Speaker, we've had a national inquiry. We've had recommendations. There are hundreds of recommendations that have been made in relation to this issue. It is a serious issue. I strongly believe that we should implement the recommendations that have already been made. And that is what we are doing. I strongly believe we should listen to victims, and we've been listening to victims on this side for decades and working with victims for decades in relation to what they want, which is local inquiries, and we've set those local inquiries up.
Mr. Speaker, he says we should listen to victims. The victims want a national inquiry. We haven't had a national inquiry. We had the child sex abuse inquiry, which Conservatives launched. There is still more to be done. It didn't cover this scandal in detail. In Manchester, just last year, authorities were still covering up abuse. The local inquiry chair there has quit. Bradford Council, an area of some of the worst abuses, refuses any inquiry, local or national. Whether it's the streets of Birmingham or the Town Hall of Bradford, it is chaos and cover-ups with Labour Council.